Maybe that'll show something that I can. You could find out who was leading that vote. You should know their way. Take this
Good morning. My name is Melissa Jeter, and I am a seminarian at the Methodist Theological School in Ohio, and I am affiliated with First Unitarian Church of Toledo. We welcome you here to First Unitarian Church. We welcome you who are here in the pews and you who are online. Also, if you are here, there are various pieces of literature in the hymnal. Look at the yellow one and fill that out if you want to stay in touch with us. Okay, we'll get the UUFYI out to you, and you will be able to keep in touch with all the things that are happening here. We are now going to move on to announcements. I'm going to start them with one, Chalice Camp begins June 7th through 11th. And if you have questions about Chalice Camp, please talk to Jenny Gottman. Jenny?
Please stop by our vestibule after service today and purchase a ticket for a raffle to win the quilt that was created by our own lovely and talented Ellie Gans. The tickets are $1 a piece or 6 for $5. Please, by all means, participate and win a chance to and purchase a chance to win this lovely piece of art by one of our beloved congregants. Today, on our minds, in our hearts, and with our spirits, there are people in our circles who, with their families and friends, have challenges of life and death, health and illness, home and travel, financial security, and monetary stress. Decisions are being made by ourselves and by others on how we can live right and die as well as possible. There are also new lives being born and many other joys and celebrations. May we be compassionate to all, as we don't know what other people are going through. So treat one another well, giving dignity and compassion, and may we be glad for their celebrations and ours. We also have on our minds, in our hearts, and with our spirits, the fact that there is war in our world. There is disaster caused by nature and disaster caused by humans, that inequality, inequity, and racism are in our societies, and that we can do our parts not to oppress and to celebrate many cultures, to grow in self and to grow universally. We hold in our hearts those seeking to enter our sometimes inhospitable country, and we wish them dignity and safety. One reason we join in religious gatherings is to realize common links. The uncommon is here too. Let's be together in faith, hope, and in love, physically and in spirit. Today is Mother's Day. We celebrate with joy those who feel gratitude for their families, and we sympathize with those for whom Mother's Day is challenging. Family relationships are complicated, and we recognize that this holiday can be both loving and painful. Let us hold one another gently in our joys and in our sorrows. Finally, we hold in our hearts the family and friends of Gladys Rudolph, who passed away on Wednesday. Gladys was the music director of First Unitarian Church of Toledo for 31 years, and we mourn the loss of our beloved friend. Visitation will be this Thursday from 3 to 7 p.m. and Friday from 10 to 11 a.m. at Walker Funeral Home on Sylvania Avenue. The funeral will be Friday at 11 a.m. at Walker Funeral Home with lunch to follow.
I have these opening words, "The Hill We Climb" by Amanda Gorman. In this truth, in this faith we trust. For while we have our eyes on the future, history has its eyes on us. This is the era of just redemption we feared in its inception. We did not feel prepared to be the heirs of such a terrifying hour, but within it, we found the power to author a new chapter, to offer hope and laughter to ourselves. So while we once asked, how can we possibly prevail over catastrophe? Now we assert, how could catastrophe possibly prevail over us?
Our opening words are from Heraclitus of Ephesus. In searching for the truth, be ready for the unexpected. Change alone is unchanging. And please join us as we recite the words of our covenant. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. And now, please rise as you are willing and able, and join us in singing hymn number 318, We Would Be One. Just over 1 year ago, I was here talking to you as your new Director of Lifelong Learning. I spoke about how much religious education relies on volunteer help and how I could do everything within my power to help run religious education, but that I could not do it by myself. You, our beloved congregation, have stepped up. You have given of yourselves, your time, your talents, and your passions beautifully and admirably, and I'm deeply grateful. You have been so beautiful and admirable that you should have an award. I have here the names of every person who has led a session of Spiritual Forum this year. Your names are in here Hunger Games style, by which I mean if you led one Spiritual Forum, your name is in here one time. If you led two, your name is here 2 times, etc. I'm going to draw a name, and that person will be this year's Rexy, the king, queen, or non-binary monarch of religious education. The Rexy will receive a crown, a badge, the thanks of a grateful congregation, and most importantly, the deep soul gratitude from your Director of Lifelong Learning. If I draw a name and the winner of the Rexy is not here this morning, I will accept the crown and the badge on the Rexy's behalf and award it to them as soon as possible. Are we ready? Drum roll, please. Melissa. The Rexy goes to Sue Childers. Congratulations, Sue. Yay! Aren't you glad you were in here this morning instead of working in the kitchen? I now pronounce you Sir Sue, the recipient of this year's Rexy Award. Thank you very much for your service. We are deeply grateful, and congratulations. What an honor. Thank you, thank you. Of course.
Reach out and touch somebody's hand. Check those off. Make this world a better place. If you can, reach out and touch somebody's hand. Make this world a better place. If you can. Reach out and touch somebody's hand. Make this world a better place. If you can. Reach out and touch somebody's hand. Make this world a better place. If you can, just try.
Take a little time out your busy day to give encouragement to someone who's lost their way. Or would I be talking to a stone if I asked you to share a problem that's not your own? We could change things if we start giving. Why don't you
reach out and touch somebody's hand?
Somebody's hand.
Make this world a better place.
Make it a better place.
If you can, reach out and touch somebody's hand.
Somebody's hand.
Make this world a better place. If you can, just try.
If you see an old friend on the street and they're down, just remember their shoes could fit your feet. Try a little kindness and you will see that it comes so very, very naturally. Oh, we could change things if we start giving. Why won't you
reach out and touch somebody's hand?
Somebody's hand.
Make this world a better place.
Make it a better place.
If you can,
I know you can do it.
Reach out and touch
Reach out
somebody's hand.
Somebody's hand.
Make this world a better place.
Make it a better place.
If you can,
why won't you do
reach
it?
out and touch
Reach out
somebody's hand.
Somebody's hand.
Make this world a better place.
Make it a better place.
If you can,
I know we can do it.
Reach out and touch
Reach out
somebody's hand.
Somebody's hand.
Make this world a better place.
Make it a better place.
If you can,
I know we can.
Whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honorable, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue, and if there be any praise, think on these things. Let's observe 1 minute of silence.
I have this reading, The Death of Sunday School and the Future of Faith Formation by Kimberly Sweeney. As stewards of our Unitarian Universalist faith, it is our responsibility to adapt our approaches to faith formation to these contemporary times. As baby boomers move and have moved into retirement and Gen Xers move into leadership and lay positions, the size of the volunteer pool is cut nearly in half. There is no curriculum out there that will bring a religious education program back to the levels of participation seen 20 or 30 years ago. A curriculum does not determine whether or not a family will participate on Sunday morning.
One fascinating part of my job is talking to other UU religious educators around the country and in Canada. Right now, we are all talking about the same issues. A small group of volunteers who are burned out and can't give anymore. A very small number of young families. Church as an institution is changing. The traditional system of having one or two ministers, a mini sort of satellite church for families, and institutional memories being held in the minds of the elders, that's a system that has worked for a long time, but is not working so well anymore. You can look around you and see that our congregations are not what they were in the 90s or the 2000s or even pre-pandemic. Why is that? I don't really know. I have a feeling it has to do with the shrinking middle class and the geographical fragmenting of families. That's just my guess. And there are people better suited than me to look into those reasons. But the fact remains that our church culture has changed, and we have to change with it. Nobody likes change. I do not like change. I love my little routines. But adaptation is not optional. Organisms can adapt or they can die out. We just don't want our church to survive. We want it to thrive. We want it to be crucial, life-saving, a thing that people in our community will miss if it's not here anymore. We want to be a vital and important force in our community. It's time for us to get creative about thinking how this church can meet the needs of the families that exist today. Creativity builds upon itself, and art builds upon itself. I have been thinking about this issue for a few years now, and I think we can take some lessons from the art world. The same philosophy could apply to music or literature or movies, but I'm going to go with visual arts just to keep things simple. Art and church have always sort of been best friends anyway. The earliest art that we know about is pretty simple. This art wasn't very realistic. It wasn't particularly colorful or complicated. What do you think these artists were saying about their world? Maybe it was, my family saw this animal today, or this is a thing that we wear when it gets cold. What about this? What are people saying here? Maybe just, I am here. This is me. This is my family. I think of this kind of artwork as similar to the very early beginnings of religion. I don't understand this thing that I see. This is a thing that my clan does. This is how we survive. I can help you. This is why we're here. You and I matter. Art continued to progress, and in the Middle Ages, things got a little more fun. This is art that I guess is trying to say something. This is a scene in a battle, I think. I don't know if it's supposed to be a representation of a real battle. I don't know if it's a symbolic battle, like a prince in waiting who can't do what he wants because of his aging father, the king. Maybe this is supposed to be a representation of how often our thoughts can go faster than our mouths. Who knows? Not me. I find this confusing, and I love it. What's the meaning of this art? Again, probably something. Maybe this is a picture of people who are trying to say something good and useful, but for whatever reason can't do it, and all they can produce is frogs. An interesting thing to note about this picture is that the men and the frogs are not really realistic. It is something that we would probably refer to as crude or cartoonish. And I think there is also a religious philosophy that's pretty crude, say, religions that overtly rank human beings, requiring some to suffer so that others may have an easier life, or religions that are used primarily as a weapon with which to make others suffer. It's comparable, this religion, to art that kind of has a long way to go before it really hits its stride. Renaissance is where art as a literal depiction really gets perfected. What is this painting? The Mona Lisa. The Mona Lisa is pretty realistic. She is clearly a regular, normal human being sitting and looking at the painter. She doesn't have fish coming out of her eyeballs or anything weird. She is just a human, and she is interesting to look at. The more you look at her, the more you see. There are things going on in the background behind her that people study. We talk about what that is, why it's there, what is the artist trying to say. This painting is a classic for sure. Everybody has seen her. Nobody really dislikes her. If you say to someone, the Mona Lisa is my favorite painting, they'll say, oh, sure, yeah, I get that. There isn't much within this picture that we criticize. Mona Lisa's eyebrows are not there, but that's not something people talk about as a flaw. People talk about the meaning of it. Why doesn't she have eyebrows? What does it mean? An earlier sketch of her had eyebrows. Why were they taken away? Is it because women used to pluck their eyebrows? Is it trying to say something more meaningful? The Mona Lisa as a piece of art is something that gets a lot of respect and not a lot of pushback. I think Mona is a good analogy for church as it is now. She's classic, she's dignified, she's beautiful. She gives people a lot to think about, And that is really good and valuable. Susie gets it. The Mona Lisa is also an artifact of a white supremacist patriarchy. Leonardo da Vinci painted at a time when white men mattered the most. That's not to say that the Mona Lisa isn't beautiful, and it's not to say she doesn't deserve respect. It does mean that the historic regard she has, that her gravitas comes from becoming famous in a time and place when she had a whole lot less competition. She became legendary in part because people didn't have the vocabulary and the tools to criticize what she represented. I think Mona Lisa is comparable to the church that we have today. She is venerable, like classic church. She is respectable. She is perhaps antiquated. There are some things missing from classic church, Lisa's eyebrows. Where is the dialogue? Where is the shaping and honing of ideas? It is not typically here in a Sunday service, and we don't criticize its absence. We take for granted that its absence has a reason and a meaning, and we respect that it is just the way it is. Classic church has one minister or other speaker during service. Everybody else is supposed to be quiet and sit still, and that's fine as far as it goes, and that works great sometimes. But we have etched in our psyches that this is foundationally what church is. And it doesn't have to be. The church is the people. Art didn't stop after the Mona Lisa. Next came Impressionism, which came around in the 1860s. When the public saw these paintings, they said, "Ew, that's weird. I hate it. Trees don't look like that. This is unfinished. This is not art." People don't like change. But today, if you say, Monet is my favorite artist, people will say, oh, sure, yeah, I get that. Monet is now a classic. People have progressed. We are humans, and it's what we do. What if classic church progressed? What if we had our kids stay in our services with us so that they can learn our hymns and learn who we are as the congregation? We, the adults, would have to bear an iota more discomfort because kids sometimes have a hard time sitting still and being quiet. But where did we get the idea that we, as adults, and our typical learning style should be centered? Why do we think that our children's spiritual development comes secondary to our perfect comfort? This place is a sanctuary. It is not a classroom, and it's certainly not my house. I don't own it. I can't tell people, sorry, no, you can't come in here. This is our sacred community. Why are we separating ourselves from each other? Art didn't stop with Impressionism. After a while, a new style developed, and when people saw this, they said, ew, that's weird, I hate it. But now, if you say, Picasso is my favorite artist, people will say, oh, sure, I get that. He's a classic. What the margins, the young ones, whom Sunday mornings are the only time they get to get some rest? What about the ones who can't afford gas to drive around checking out churches? The ones who have almost no time or money to spare, but who still need a spiritual community? Right now, the people and the voices we center are the ones that are easiest for us to center. The people who don't mind speaking up. The people who are quick to respond, who are already well established here, have probably already spoken up in the past. The ones that inertia maybe is already serving. After Picasso, art continued to progress. When people saw Jackson Pollock, they said, ew, that's weird, I hate it. But now people love him. They make movies about him. He is a classic. I have asked my families in church, my church families, to imagine ways that church might serve them better, and to tell me how we could do that. No idea is too outlandish. Nothing is too impractical. Just tell me what would help you. I haven't gotten a lot of responses to that. I think because that question puts a lot of work on people. Imagine how things could be better and tell me that. What if instead we were proactively innovative about serving our community? What if we took our ordinary components of church, our time, our service, our routine, and just rearranged them into something completely new? We can do things that are creative and not monumental or exhausting. One thing we do along these lines is use our values, our building, and our people to offer our whole lives sexuality education to kids, teens, and adults. This is not classic church programming. It's progressive. It is subversive. It's bold. It's life-saving and life-affirming. It marries the spiritual, the practical, and the prosaic. It turns people's church expectations upside down and provides something that is of real spiritual and practical value in an area where people need it. We can do other things that are not quick and simple rearrangements. We could completely reshape our community landscape. We can redefine what church is. In 50 years, where will we be? How will we have adapted to help the humans around us? We have the power here to create a church that is interactive, something that is more meaningful to adults and to children, to the wealthy and the struggling, to people who can't sit still, to people who have to work on Sundays. Church can be something that people use every day. We can serve every day. We can provide childcare and food. We can teach kids and teens how to mend and cook. We can teach young families how to grow vegetables in our garden, how to learn, how to apologize. We are limited only by our imaginations and our willingness to center ourselves and our comfort. Our church believes that the people who have power should listen to and lift up the people who do not. Within these walls, are you a person who has power? If you are here today for the religious education service, you probably are. You are probably a pretty stalwart member of our congregation. There are probably people here whose names you don't know. Talk to them. Talk to their kids. Ask them questions about themselves every single time you see them. If these people who you don't know were comfortable integrating themselves into our community, they would be integrated already. At one of my churches where I first started there, I sat at coffee hour alone with my child for 1 solid year before I started making friends. It's because I don't go out and make friends. I just wait for it to happen by magic. And there are lots of people like me out there, reasonably good people. Find out who these people are. Who loves plants like you do? Give them a slip of your hydrangea. Who does woodworking like you do? Lend them your weird, obscure woodworking tools that nobody else appreciates. There's somebody else here who loves the Mona Lisa like you do and also loves Jackson Pollock like you do. You, the classic people here, are required by our religion to draw in and lift up the people who are not like you, to make them comfortable at our church, to empower them, to help shape our community, to help them become the new classic church people. Blessed be.
Thank you, Jenny. For our offering, you may give by going to uutoledo.org and clicking give, then online giving. Or you can email a check to 3205 Glendale Avenue, Toledo, Ohio, 43614, or you may drop your offering in the basket in the foyer. And for the offertory song, we will have in the teal hymnal, 10:08, When Our Heart is in a Holy Place.
We are blessed with love and amazing grace. Our heart is in a holy place. When we trust the wisdom in each of us, every color, every creed and tongue, and we see our faces in each other's eyes. When our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place. We are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place. When we tell our story from deep inside, and we listen with a loving mind, and we hear our voices in each other's words, when our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place. We are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place. When we share the silent, sacred space, and the God of our hearts dwells within, and we feel the power of each other's hand. When our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place. We are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place.
Next Sunday, May 21st, our spiritual forum speaker will be Dr. Dilip A. Das, who is the Vice President for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at the University of Toledo. He promises to lead a very important and interesting discussion. The sermon next week is titled We Congregate and will be delivered by our own Reverend Tim Barker. And then after the sermon comes our annual meeting. Come refreshed, come energized, come with great wells of patience as we discuss and plan the year coming forward for our church.
Immediately after today's service, join us for coffee hour and partake in refreshments and conversation. Visitors especially come and be a part of our community. I have these closing words by Hosea Ballou. If we agree in love, there is no disagreement that can do us any injury. But if we do not, no other agreement can do us any good. Let us endeavor to keep the unity of spirit in the bonds of peace.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of justice, or the fire of community. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Thank you.
Lifted up, cloudless away, moonlight, starlight, my Lord, into peace and the brightness of day.